Welcome to Board Game Binge, the place where we bring you bite-sized, bingeable board game content from across the industry. I'm your host, James Staley, and in this episode, we're chatting with Dan Hughes, the host of the Sporadically Board podcast. He's also a YouTuber who, with his daughter Cora, makes videos for Dice Tower reviewing children's and family board games. During the lockdown, they both decided to take a shot at designing a board game of their own. The first game, called CoraQuest, hits Kickstarter on February 1st. Dan, welcome to the Binge. How you doing?
Thank you for having me. I'm doing very well. Just about put on about 10 or 12 pounds from Christmas, but other than that, I'm all right.
I think we're all getting the COVID pounds, and we're also getting the Christmas pounds.
That's it. Yeah.
Like layering on like a layer cake, right?
Well, I've been practicing all my life, so I'm used to putting on pounds. Yeah, so it's fine.
And I'd be remiss to say that Dan's connecting with us from the UK, so this is a little late on your side, and I do appreciate you joining us so late in the night on your end.
No, it's fine. I'm happy to be here. Thank you very much for having me, as I say.
So let's start off with kind of the history behind how you got into this. So how did you get into board games? Is this something you've been into your whole life, or just when you had kids, or how did that kind of come about?
The same story as most people, really. And that when I was 18, did D&D, Warhammer, all the kind of Games Workshop stuff. And then I kind of grew out of that. I don't know, I grew out of it, but that kind of fell away in my early 20s. And then it must be about 9 or 10 years ago now, suddenly someone introduced me to Carcassonne, and that was it. I was, I went from having no games to having 20 games in the space of a month. I did that whole buy everything phase that you do in the first year or two of board gaming, and then I've slowly been trying to, thin down my collection ever since, basically.
Yeah, it becomes addictive, I guess, when you get those first couple games. It's like, oh, maybe get another one, or somebody introduces you to another game.
You start watching all the top 10s and you go, and you think they're basically shopping lists, which is fine. I mean, that's how it works, isn't it, when you start off in gaming, and then you refine first you like everything, and then as time goes on, you refine your cake. And then I've been playing games with my kids about as long as I've got my eldest is 17 and my youngest is 8. Okay. So I've been playing kids games for as long as I've been playing board games, really. I also run a kids games club, although that hasn't met for a year, obviously. But in Huddersfield, my hometown, I run a monthly kids game club where I provide all the library of kids games, and then people come and all play games together, and it's really, really, really nice.
How's that work? Is that like obviously it's not happening with COVID right now, but was it at like a local library, or how did
our local game store was kind enough to host us. So I think on the second Sunday of every month, for 3 hours, we take over the entire floor with kids running around and stuff like that, usually kind of between the ages of 5 and 11. That's what we're aiming at. Oh, wow. And we always ask the parents aren't allowed to leave, so it's about a family coming together, meeting other families, and playing board games together. And I go around teaching all these different board games to people. It's really enjoyable, actually. It's fantastic.
How'd you find that shift, going from classic D&D type games and adult type games to then into the kind of the kids zone? How was that shift for you?
Well, I think every year, I didn't go this year. Whenever I go to Essen, there's all these fantastic adult games.
Yeah.
But I tell you, the real innovation in board gaming is in kids games. The real, there's games with magnets and games where I've recently got a game where it's a memory game, but you've got a doll's house and you're peeking through the windows of the doll's house to see what's in there. And then you have to remember that and turn it around, all that kind of stuff. There's some amazingly innovative kids games, and just because they're simple mechanisms doesn't mean to say they're any they're any less value in kids games. I think kids games are marvelous, and I love them. And you get the added benefit of playing with your kids. It's something you both want to do. I think that's the wonderful thing about children's board games is adults and kids can both want to do it and both gain enjoyment out of it. At least good kids games.
I think that's one of the great things about having kids in general, is it allows you to be a kid again, right?
Yeah.
I think back to my Star Wars figures when I was a kid. I collected all these Star Wars figures during the original trilogy, had them mothballed for decades. And then one of my kids got into Star Wars. I'm like, all right, out come the action figures. Let's get down on the floor and let's start doing some Jedi magic here.
Yeah. Lego's the same with me. Lego, I tell you,
Yeah, Lego's another great one too, right?
Yeah,
you always find the collections way larger with your kids than when you're a kid, right? It's like you're almost overcompensating. You got to have an even bigger collection than when you're a kid. So
that's right. Yeah,
that's awesome. So your daughter Cora, so she's 8 years old.
8 years old, yeah.
But you've been doing videos now for a while with her. What age was she when you guys first started?
She was 4 when we first started.
Holy smokes!
We basically, I've read a post on Reddit saying what some good board games for kids. So you freaked me out there. You've changed the screen. I
changed the screen for people listening. We just changed the screen. I'm looking at Dan's YouTube feed just to show the people watching how many videos these guys have cranked out over the past.
Well, we've done a lot more than that. It's just these are ones that I managed. These are ones that were on the Dice Tower that I ended up uploading to my own thing. So saw this post on Reddit, and I just thought, someone asking for suggestions. I thought I had the video camera there, or it's a laptop webcam. I thought, I'll just go through them myself. And Cora did it with me, and she really enjoyed it. And I thought, well, send something into the Dice Tower, see if he wants it. And he ran the first one, and he said it was popular. So yeah, been doing that for a while.
Well, I'd say the dynamic between the two of you is it's very engaging, right? So to see the two of you kind of back and forth talking to each other, and she's got such a strong little personality.
Yeah, she's a good kid.
You can't help but not watch, right? So
yeah. Yes. People don't really watch for me. They're watching for Cora. It's Cora and that other guy. I'm well aware I'm the less popular half. So that's
she's
fine.
Like the producer, and you're just you're the sidekick talent there, I guess. Eh?
Yeah, well, she definitely calls the shots. I mean, the thing with working with a kid, I mean, she's slightly different now. She's a bit older, but there's never more than one take. You can't do more than one take. So everything you ever do is just hold on and just hope that it goes all right, because she won't do it again.
So you just do one long extended take, I guess, and then edit it down. Is that kind of way you do it?
Cut the bits out. Yeah, cut the bits out when I'm screaming at her. Come on, be more entertaining, I say to her. Or you'll go back in the cupboard.
Yeah, exactly. And then, so how long you guys been working on like games? Like, is this you got this game now, CoraQuest, that you've been working on during COVID?
Yeah.
Is it the first kind of time you guys have you started modifying games? Because I know a lot of people do that, right? Like when people design games, they start off doing home rules and house rules and things like that, and then it kind of evolves to game creation.
I'd say certainly I've been modifying games in order to simplify them in order to play with Cora, for example. But Cora has made her own games for fun quite frequently. They're usually a roll and move variant or whatever. But this is the first time. It was during lockdown. Yeah. And to be honest, I was absolutely sick of talking about Romans. I don't know what it's like in Canada, but the UK children get Romans rammed down their throats. And I'd already done Romans once when I was a kid, so I didn't want to do it again. So we were doing these worksheets. It was getting a bit tedious, and we were both getting bored of homeschooling, basically. So I thought, well, let's just make a game, see what happens with a game. And Cora had been watching me play D&D with my friend, so she's been playing Zombicide, which is not really appropriate for kids. Do you know what I mean? She goes,
it's not like you're letting her sit down and play Call of Duty. I think it's
exactly. Yeah. Well, she once went to a teacher and said, "Oh, my favorite game is Zombicide," and I went, "Oh, I'm not sure your teacher's going to be that impressed with me." Not that I knew what a Zombicide was, but still. So it was really as a homeschooling thing, because there's all sorts of educational opportunities within the board game. If you try, I mean, there's all the maths with the probability and stuff like that, and that's how we started off. And then we did some creative. So we did a dungeon crawler, and then we did some creative writing around. I asked her to write backgrounds for all the characters and art, which she drew all the characters, and then we designed the dungeon tiles using a program. So that's a bit DT, design technology. And she was getting more and more excited by it and saying, "This is like a real game. This is like, you know." And we play tested it and stuff, and then we had little meetings and what worked, what didn't work, and things like that. And it was so empowering for her, but I just kept going with it, really.
I was going to say, did any of it feel like homework to her, or was it the excitement of creating something that it drove, the initiative on her part?
No, I think very little of it felt like homework. The thing that did feel like homework was doing the backstories to the character. She doesn't really like... literacy, as they call it these days. She doesn't really like writing that much. She loves reading, but she doesn't like creative writing, and so I had to drag that out with her and sit over her. But that's the only time it felt like work to her. Yeah, and as I say, it was empowering, and she felt like it was something that was going to be real and things like that. And it looked quite good because we used a computer to design the dungeon tiles, so it looked good, on the table. So yeah.
And so was there any kind of so the program you use, is it like a graphical program you're using, or
I think it's called Dungeon Creator. I think it's called.
Okay.
It's incredibly easy to. It's designed for role players and stuff like that, to make dungeons, but it's incredibly easy to use. It's basically a drag and drop. So you drag out your dungeon, and then you can drop in items and things like that. And it's all Creative Commons. It's all open license, so you can use it commercially if you want to. It's a fantastic program, actually. I really highly recommend it. We haven't ended up using that as time's gone on, but that's how it all started. So she designed all the dungeon tiles and things, and then we modified it later on. Yeah.
What were some of the hiccups that you guys encountered when you were designing this game? Like, I got to imagine, number one, you've got the dynamic of, trying to work with your kid on something creative, and you want them to be able to put as much of them in as possible.
Mm-hmm.
But given age, there's going to be certain things where your knowledge is going to have to kind of come in to help, but kids aren't necessarily receptive to that. So how did you kind of juggle all that?
It's tricky, really. I think it's important. It was important to me to treat her as because I wasn't worried about this game being good at the start. Do you know what I mean? That's come later with play testing and things like that. At the start, this was a game that we were going to enjoy together and create together. So
that's cool.
So sort of anything went, but like a lot of things with kids, I gave her like 3 options rather than say, what are we doing here? Because she would feel overwhelmed with that. So 3 options, and kind of broke it down into small steps so that each decision went along. But sometimes we had disagreements on things, and she's always had the last veto on everything, which is irritating at times. But still, I wanted the goose as one of the baddies, but she wasn't having it. But yeah. So it just breaking it down to small achievable chunks, and then as we started playtesting it, what basically happened was I was posting. I've got a podcast, Sporadically Board. I was posting about this just lightheartedly on the process on our Facebook group, and one of my friends, Gary, who's an incredibly talented artist, for a bit of fun, he created a mock box cover for it.
Oh, cool.
And it was so good that suddenly, when you suddenly start something that hadn't occurred to you, and it just suddenly start coming, actually, I'm really enjoying this. This is and I think we've come up with a really good thing. And we could do this. We could, because guy put coming to Kickstarter soon and all that, joke. And it's like, well, we could. So we sent it out to playtest, and then people made suggestions, said, that this wasn't so good and that wasn't so good. And so we sat down and thought, how can we? And that's really where Cora struggled more. She was okay creating the whole thing, but kind of working out creative ways of that's when I was giving her the options and things. Well, we could do it this way, or we could do it that way. And then getting her to talk through which way and why and things like that, giving her reasons and things.
So your friend doing the cover, that was kind of the catalyst, I guess I would say, that led you to believe, okay, you know what, this isn't just a fun game we're making. Maybe we can take it to the next level, which is Kickstarter the game and actually get it
published. We were kind of thinking more print and play, to be honest. So it's kind of gone in stages, really.
Interesting.
So and Gary's Gary was just saying, I'll give you a hand. I'll do all the art for you and things like that. To make it a print and play thing. And then again, as it develops and develops, I'm thinking, well, this is really good. I really think, because there's not many Ameritrashy games that are good for kids. There's not many dungeon crawlers that are great for kids. There's Mice and Mystics, there's Stuffed Fables. And after that, you're kind of heavily adapting existing stuff to play with a kid. And the kid, it's great. I mean, having adventures, going and battling monsters, finding treasure, exploring dungeons. These are all things that kids will really enjoy. But it just doesn't seem. No one seems to have really gone down that route for a thing. And a game, not necessarily kids play together, but a game that a grown-up can play with a child and have the same kind of level of enjoyment out of it. So something with tactical depth, but also simple enough for a child to be able to make meaningful decisions within it. That's
So how did you do the play testing? Was it pretty much a tabletop simulator, I guess, because of the lockdown, or
I've done quite a bit of tabletop simulator play testing, but I also because I'm a very privileged situation of having people listen to the podcast, people wanting to help us out and things like that.
Yeah.
I just put a call out. Does anyone want to play test this? And they print and played it basically. So quite a bit of blind play testing went on, because as much as I'm wanting this game to be for adults, I also wanted kids to play test it with their parents or an adult. And that tabletop simulator is not appropriate for that, really. It's not the best thing. If times are normal, I would have been taking it down to my family board game group and playing it there, but unfortunately it wasn't. So a combination of tabletop simulator, but also quite a lot of people playing it and then writing, messaging me back and saying, well, this was good, didn't like this. And then that's where we kind of made changes and things like that, which, excuse me, which was amazing because each time someone came back with a problem, it made it so much more better. There's a number of little key points I can think of that really, really improved the game. And kind of gave rise to mechanics which were simple, but also I haven't really seen elsewhere. So I was really, really pleased. Like, one of the things was someone said my daughter got quite upset whenever she missed. And I thought, well, it's a dungeon crawler. She's gonna have to get over it, And then I thought, well, so now when you miss, you flip your card over, and next time you roll even more dice to hit. So you become determined, is how we say it. So it takes some of the sting for kids out of missing, because you're going to be better next time, yet still has that peril. Because if you take missing out the equation, then there's no peril, is there? And there's no excitement. So it's kind of I don't know, a balancing act between those two, really. So that's one of the mechanics that came out of playtesting. It's really simple, but I would never have thought of it without someone coming up with that problem for me.
I think that's interesting. The playtesting angle. It's kind of a double-edged sword, right? On one hand, you want to take as much feedback as possible, because there's something's going to come up. I just had this on a game I'm working on that came up about 2 weeks ago. Something I never even considered on as a mechanic on one of the cards, and as like a light bulb goes off. It's like it's so obvious now that I see it, but I didn't see it before. So you have the benefit of this kind of free advice from people, right? So people who care want to see you, do better and want to see a better game. On the flip side, sometimes getting that feedback is not easy to take, right? And some of that feedback could be they don't like what you've created. Yeah. So how did you approach that? Because you have a situation now where you have a child involved, right, in the development, where obviously youth have feelings and stuff that have to be taken into consideration as well, and you got to try to insulate them. How did you balance that?
Well, I went away and sulked for about 2 days, then got over it. And then thought of some options, and then went back to Cora. Is basically how I did it. And any kind of, because you're right, and that, it is hard sometimes, especially when it's something you felt proud of, and someone goes, "Well, that's wrong." Yeah. And then you go, "Well, no, it's not." And then after a day, you go, "Well, maybe it is." And sometimes it's not as well. Sometimes sometimes people are talking rubbish, but most of the time, it at least raises something within you. So I've been very careful never to have this game have kind of any negative connotations for us. So it's always been about putting options to her. Should we leave it as it is? Should we do this, or should we do that? And sometimes it has been leave it as it is. There's a line of sight is always difficult within and someone suggested a very simple way of simplifying it, but it took a lot of the tactics out of it. And so she said, "No, I don't want that, because then you can't do this, you can't do that." So I'm like, fine, fair enough. That's what we're doing. Then we're having a line of sight rule instead of you can hit anybody in the real room type thing. And that was her decision, and we went with it.
So there's certain things where, although the change was kind of recommended, she stuck to her guns and said, "No, I
yeah, basically, yeah. I mean, not things that if I genuinely felt it was really detrimental, I'd I'd have been putting the dad pressure on a little bit, but yeah, no, she's definitely she's had veto on everything. As I say,
I think too. Sometimes kids have a different perspective that, as an adult, you're looking through a different lens, and you may not appreciate kind of those young eyes and the experience that they're coming at something from too. So, I mean, who's to say the adult's correct, right? Often it could be the kid's correct.
Yeah. And one of the things with kids games, so I know I'm babbling. One of the things with kids games that I feel quite passionate about is a lot of adults design games that they think kids would want. Like one of the pieces of feedback was, well, surely all these heroes, instead of swords and bows and arrows and things, they should be using lightsabers and pea shooters and and hockey sticks and things that kids use. And Cora was like, no, swords are cool. It's like, yeah, swords are cool. You're right. And just because it's a kind of adult's view of what a child thinks is cool. And some thinking, well, the fantasy genre is a bit hackneyed and cliche. It's not to an 8-year-old. Fantasy genre is very exciting to an 8-year-old who's just watched Lord of the Rings for the first time. And they want a sword, a bow and arrow like Legolas had, not a pea shooter or a frisbee that they can throw at that's it. It's a very adult way of looking at what a child's perspective should be, whereas in reality Cora wanted it to be like the game she was seeing me play. So it's definitely whimsical, and it's definitely one of the quests is to find a teapot. It's not
That's cool.
It's not high fantasy or anything like that, but it's also not kidifying everything.
So let's talk a little bit about the game itself. So I've got for people watching and those listening, we'll do our best to describe it. So the core essence of this game. So describe what this game is, kind of the basic structure of the game, basic ways you play, and kind of what these objectives and so forth are, if you don't mind.
It's got a number of different quests you can choose from, and you have a deck of cards, of these square cards, which will come out and make the dungeon. So for people on the podcast can't see, but people who are watching will be able to see that these squares are kind of laid out in it appears random way, and makes up a dungeon basically. Each card has got a different.
You're building a dungeon as you go, right?
You're building a dungeon as you go, and then interspersed with these, so seeded throughout this deck, which is shuffled randomly, but seeded from roughly every 5 cards. There is a card which has a plot attached to it. So when that comes out, you read a bit of the plot. So in the adventure you've got here, you're off to find some gnomes who've been trying to find a pet snake, but the pet snake has ended up being a giant snake. And so the first kind of encounter, you find the backpack of this gnome, so it's a clue. So you read out a bit about the backpack of the gnome, and you get a special item card for finding that. And then the second encounter is a pit trap, and you've got to try and escape the pit trap. And then the third encounter, you find one of the gnomes who's very upset because her brother's been captured by this snake. And on the fourth encounter, the fourth kind of story tile, as we call, that's where the snake is. So there's narrative. It's a randomized dungeon with each card has like little spots on that monsters come out on. So it's a randomized dungeon, but within that there's a narrative. So that's the fangs for the memory one, and one of them you've got to go and collect money to buy a teapot because you've broken the wizard's teapot, and another one you've got to go and turn all the taps off in the dungeon because it's filling up with water and it's going to flood the town. So you've got to go to 4 different places to so there's kind of 4 plot points within the dungeon that you'll hit roughly every 5 cards. As I say, they're shuffled within it, but yeah.
And how many plots or how many stories or objectives are there in the game?
I've got 5 written. There's more coming. And more will be stretch cards. But the beauty of these cards is is that they're going to be a bit like Dixit cards in that there's going to be multiple different ways of interpreting them. And so the vision is that kids can write their own stories by choosing which card they want to do and choosing where they want to put them in the thing, and then do their own thing as well. So that's the aim, is that you can write your own adventures with using the cards that we've got, because none of them are specific. They're kind of general, like like a broken table might be where the snake is, but it also might be where you find a magical sword. It's just completely up to you how you want to do that. So we'll provide probably at the end of the day about 8-9 adventures, but then we got rules and encouragement within the rule book to create your own stories within that. Similarly, cool. we've got rules for creating your own heroes, and we've got rules for creating your own monsters as well. So that's a big part of it, because all the art in the game is actually done by kids and then coloured in by Gary, our artist.
Yeah.
So it looks great. It looks absolutely fantastic, to be honest.
Oh yeah.
It looks really charming, but also it's to try and encourage kids to say, well, your art's good enough. You do it. You create some standees, you create some, and we're going to have templates for, we've got a secret project which I'm not allowed to say anything about yet. Well, I am allowed because it's my game, but I'm not saying anything about, but basically ways of creating your own character cards and your own standees and things to so I'm getting very enthusiastic. So half of it is about, there's all the stuff in the box, but then a lot of it is you can make this your own. You can make your own monsters, you can make your own heroes, you can make your own treasure cards, you can make your own adventures.
Oh, it's super cool. I think it also encourages creative writing, right? With
with
kids.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I was impressed by the number of pieces. I mean, you're still adding more stuff, but even in the unboxing video that I saw on your channel, like the number of pieces was pretty impressive once you laid it on a table, right?
It looks really big. It packs down quite small, but it's really big.
Yeah, it comes across as a pretty beefy game. Where did you get your prototypes done? If you
I can't remember. A guy in Hungary.
Okay.
I can send you a link. Sorry, I don't have it on me.
So it wasn't like the Game Craft or anything like that. It was like just
no. It was okay. He does professionally do prototypes for board games, but I think it's a European equivalent, basically. But I've got the other person who's involved. We've got Gary, who's the artist, and the other person involved is Mark Cook, who used to be the CEO of Hush Hush Games, who did Fog of Love.
Oh, okay.
And he's handling all the logistics and the
manufacturing and all that.
Yeah, because I don't no idea what I'm doing with that stuff.
Yeah.
So I needed someone who's got a bit of a clue. So Mark's very kindly offered to do that for us. So that's cool.
Well, and the cool thing is number one, you bring confidence to your backers that you've got somebody on your team that does understand all that, so that rest assured they're going to get their game.
Yeah, because I'm an idiot. Yeah.
No. But then the second part of that is you get to, as a new kind of developer, you get to watch, right? You get to kind of piggyback and see how some of these things are done, so you can build up your knowledge base.
And it's fascinating how expensive everything is.
Yeah, it is. It's crazy. But
not the manufacturing, that's relatively cheap. It's just everything else.
Yeah, prototyping is expensive, and all getting up to the point where we're ready to make the manufacturing part. I always tell people is, in my mind, actually the easier part. It's all the other stuff like the social media,
safety test, because it's a kid's game. We've got to get it properly safety tested. That costs a fortune as well.
At certain ages and so forth. Where are you doing your safety testing? Are you going to get your manufacturer to do that? Or
the manufacturer's going to do that for us. Yeah. And there's been various different rules changes with Brexit and things, so that's a bit of a nightmare as well.
I guess.
And
then have you set a target yet? Like, I know that, so your campaign comes out on February 1st on Kickstarter. I know some of the people were actually asking in the lobby here that are watching. Have you set kind of your goal? Like, have you thought how many, like what kind of pledge level you need to get to?
We need, Mark's done quite a extensive costing. I mean, it may change because shipping's a nightmare at the moment as well.
Yeah.
And things. So we've costed it as it is now, and then we're going to revise that on, the last week of January to make sure we still are okay. About 400 backers is is what we need to get us over the line. And then more than that, would be better.
Yeah, of course. More is always better than less. That's for sure when it comes to Kickstarter. But
I'm quite a pessimistic person, so I was very keen to make sure that the line is where we can really do this. Do you know what I mean? Not this fake business where you pretend the line's somewhere else and stuff like that. The line's there.
That's the line, 400 backers.
Yeah, 400 backers. Yeah, it's not going to be an expensive game. I mean, as I say, it's not. We're not a. The price is still vaguely in flux, but we're talking kind of 30 to 35 pounds. So I don't know what that is in about.
It's like $70 Canadian, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, 70.
Yeah, you're close. I think we're a 2-to-1 ratio, I think, with the UK.
Really? Well, just wait till after Brexit, then we'll
maybe it'll change after Brexit.
We'll be on a par. But yeah. Well, it's all done in American dollars anyway, so it's going to have to be.
So how do people find you? So if somebody wants to back this game and they, I mean, I don't know why they wouldn't, because this is such a cool idea, especially if you have kids. I think this is a great game to sit and play with your kids and get them involved in the creative process as well.
Yeah, well, that's what we're hoping.
How do they follow along? So how can they be part of this journey in the lead up to February 1st?
You can sign up to our newsletter at CoraQuest.com.
Okay.
We don't tend to spam there. It's about once every month, probably a few more running up to the Kickstarter. But where you can really get involved and maybe even contribute some of your kids' art, because we're still occasionally asking for art for things and stuff like that. That's the Facebook group. If you search for CoraQuest on Facebook and join us there, that is probably the best place, and you'll be told when it goes live there as well. Don't worry, I'll be talking about it going live when it happens.
And also in the notes of this interview, I'm also going to put a link to your Kickstarter preview Notify Me page. So anybody who wants to follow along, click on that link. It'll take you to the preview page. Then click the Notify Me button. You'll be signed up to be notified as soon as this campaign goes live.
Yeah.
Dan, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on this podcast.
Thank you.
Hopefully we can get you back again.
For splurting.
That's all right. And all the best to you and your family, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you.
Cheers. Ciao. This has been an episode of the Board Game Binge podcast, hosted by James Staley, produced by James Staley and Mike Bruner, with original music by Nick Smith. If you would like to watch these interviews live, simply join the Facebook group Board Game Binge, and you'll get access to live interviews, giveaways, and interesting board game content from across the industry. I can't wait for you to join us. See you next time.